Yes.
So I am just going to go ahead and start. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see so many people here for our first short course in network science. This is sponsored by the Network Science Society. I'm Michelle Gervin. I am a professor of physics at the University of Maryland, and my research is at the intersection of network science and machine learning. I also serve as vice president of the Network Science Society and chair of the education committee, who started to lead this effort in terms of we want to offer short courses that are online, so you don't have to go to a net site to go to the tutorial type sessions. And so anybody can benefit from this. So I'm really pleased today to see you all and to introduce this course and tell you a little bit about our instructors. So we have for our lecturer, Professor Santo Fortunato from Indiana University. And he is a seminal scholar in the field of network science. He did his PhD in physics and then transitioned to network science early in his career after his PhD, has been working in areas like community detection and science of science, and has some really beautiful work in that area. But in addition to his research, his impactful research results, he has put a lot of effort into educating the community about network science. So he has a wonderful book called A First Course in Network Science, and has developed a full course for Indiana University. And for us, he was willing to translate that into a short course that could be really widely accessible. So we're really excited about that. And also, I wanted to introduce our hands-on instructor, Satyaki Sikdar, who is an incoming assistant professor of computer science at Loyola University, Chicago. He was a postdoctoral fellow, or I guess is currently a postdoctoral fellow with Professor Fortunato, and has worked in network science, machine learning, and computational social science. And he's put together a really lovely set of materials for you to work through in the hands-on sessions. We also have a great set of TAs. I think I'm going to leave that to Santo to introduce our TAs, and they're going to be helping in the hands-on session and also having office hours. So with that, I hope you really enjoy this short course. There's lots of opportunity to communicate on Slack, in the hands-on sessions, and in the office hours if you're having any difficulties, or if you just want to, pose ideas about network science and bounce them off people like our TAs who have already had experience in the area. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Santo, and thank you very much for leading this charge.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. Thanks. It was really delightful to work with you on this. Let's see if we'll be on the same idea in 1 week, when the thing will be over. But we're doing our best, and we can, of course, improve things as we go. Thanks also for the lovely words you said about my work. The challenge here was to compress a course which was intended to span 16 weeks, including exams, into a week and a half, basically. And at the end, we decided that we're going to have basically 6 hours of lecture time, so divided in 4 units of an hour and a half, starting with the one today. And with each of the lecture followed by, maybe not immediately in the calendar because you have other needs, we want to expose you to as much knowledge as possible before you decide in time for your decision on what project to work to finish the course. And that's why we're going to have 3 classes this week and only 1 next week, and the hands-on sessions will follow, the corresponding lectures. Each hands-on session is going to last 2 hours, and you're going to strongly, yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, exactly. Thanks a lot, Satyaki. Yes, I'm going to strongly recommend it, of course, to do that, because there's going to be some moments in which you'll be tested, so to speak, not in a nasty way. We're going to ask you some questions connected to the material that has just been exposed, and you will have to answer those questions. It could be questions about code and some couple of theoretical questions about the notions introduced until that moment. Before, of course, I give you more detail about this, let me introduce the rest of our crew, our great assistant. There's 5 of them, and I will go in alphabetical order. I will just say one, 2 lines of introduction for each of them. So if you're online, Anna, perhaps can you quickly introduce yourself?
Hello, hello, I'm Anna. Yeah, I'm from Northwestern University. I'm a PhD student here.
Thank you. Alessandra?
Hello, I am Alessandra. I'm at Northeastern University and I'm a postdoc at the Network Institute.
Thank you. Fateme?
Hello, my name is Fatema. I'm a postdoc currently at Lodi School of Informatics at Indiana University, working with Professor Fortunato.
Thank you. Daniel? If Daniel on? Let's see. Of course, there's just too many people right now. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't know if Daniel's on at the moment, but
Okay, Sarah then. Sarah, I saw.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm a postdoc fellow at MIT Sensible City Lab. Nice to see all of you.
Thanks. I mean, Daniel, I don't know, at some point he's going to join, I'm sure, is one of our PhD students at Lodi School of Informatics, Computing and Engineering. He's a PhD advisor, Philip Paradicchi, who is a regular collaborator. So, okay, so given that we have only, actually less with this introduction, 6 hours to introduce the concepts, I would like to ask you to formulate the questions either in the last few minutes at the end of the class, if you're going to have them, or, and of course, we don't want to miss any question, not only about how the course is structured and then what you're supposed to do, or any other question you may have, but also about the contents. Of course, at the end, you're here to try to learn something. So hold them, just write them down so that you don't forget about them. And that's the reason why we have these office hours, and also why we have the Slack channel to facilitate communication. You're not sure about something, send a message to the instructors by Slack, or just wait until the next available TA session, office hour session. You will see also who's going to be where. This is the main Zoom link, the one that you're seeing now. So if you have access to that, there is no problem. You're going to be able to follow basically the core of the course, but there's going to be 2 additional Zoom links to interact with our instructors, to ask them questions, things you don't understand or things you're curious about. They will be there to assist you. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks a lot, Michelle. Yeah. Introductions on Slack. Yes, I don't know exactly how to do, but I think I'm also going to ask probably Satyaki later. I'm not really very good at Slack anyway. And if there is any issue, by the way, we shared a bunch of links. Make sure that the links click fine, that you go to the right place. If there is any problem, this is one of the questions you can ask, of course. We want you to have access to all the information. So we prepared that Dropbox folder because it was a natural place to put all in PDF format, all the lecture slides, including the ones that are going to use today. So the full contents of the course are already available, and the Python notebooks where Satyaki is going to use to guide you through the hands-on sessions are going to be made available after each of the sessions, because after each of the sessions, we have 24 hours to submit a copy of that notebook with your answers to the problems that we're going to ask you to solve in some moments of these sessions. So let me see what else is necessary. Yeah, so like I said, use Slack. It's easy to learn as far as I mean, at some point I was using it myself. And this is the hands-on session. Really, of course, a core part of this is what we will use somehow to see if these notions will go through. And of course, you come from different backgrounds. We know something about your profile and your interest. We try to make everything accessible. So hopefully you can find a good compromise between those who are perhaps more, we have a more quantitative background, and those that maybe are just curious about the main concepts. At the end, you're going to get a certificate, and maybe Michelle, I don't know if you want to say something about this. We'll have, of course, to evaluate the answers to the questions, and also your final project. So the way that this course will end is by working ideally in a group with a few of your colleagues here, and on some idea, which could be a simple analysis of a graph that you like, and we provided links to places from which you can download a lot of these graphs, so you can pretty much choose whatever you want, or something a bit more elaborate. And we're going to provide you some suggestions, some stuff that you might want to do, might consider doing, not necessarily, word by word, line by line. These are just ideas to give a feeling of what you can do, with networks. And at the same time, it's something that has to be realistically feasible within the few days between the end of this week and the end of the following week, when you're supposed to deliver the results of this project, which is going to be a short presentation. But we're going to discuss this on Thursday, when we're going to have a session about these project pitches and what you're going to do. The folder notebooks in Docker seems to be empty for me. Yes, it is empty. Like I said, these things, I don't know if you just joined now, these things will be filled after each hands-on session. So in fact, 24 hours after the first hands-on session is going to be tomorrow, which basically means Wednesday. Santiago is going to add the first one. And then when he finishes the second one, he's going to add the second one. Because if you share these things right now, you're going to see, you're going to see also too much somehow, including some part of we can, of course, hide the solutions to the questions, but we want you somehow to explore the things during the session and not before. So for the lecture slides, there is no problem. The contents are there. They can be found in so many other places. But for the hands-on session, instead, the material is going to be shared only after each section. So that's the reason. It's intentional. The other file that you find right now, already available, is this in the repository, is this list of, I think, 3 links. One is the links to the dataset we use for our own book and our own course. And we're going to play with some of this dataset in the hands-on session. And I'm going to show some pictures of some of these datasets also in the slides occasionally. But the other 2 are links to much broader, much bigger and richer repositories. And you can, you can use them to download other datasets. So you will have you'll be exposed to hundreds and hundreds of different data sets. And then, depending on your preferences, your curiosities and attitudes, and interests, you can choose one or the other, or you can decide to engage in something which is a bit more methodological or theoretical, like building a model. This is one of the pitches that we're going to propose to you, and we're going to share them on Thursday in the dedicated session. Okay, so I think, let me make sure that this is all I wanted to say. Yes, about the questions. One thing that you may have noticed is that these sessions will be recorded, both the lectures themselves, like the ones we're going to have today, and the hands-on session. So it's the same Zoom link. We're going to record all these things, and we're going to make then these recordings available at some point, ideally right away. We can get these things in real time. And the final thing to say, we already mentioned, mostly repeating stuff that I already told you, but since this is the first time that we're going to kind of face each other, it doesn't hurt to repeat it. The tutorial today is a very basic introduction to Python. And we were pleased to see that at least most of the participants in this course already have some Python exposure and expertise. I suppose with various degrees of competence, because also age plays a role. You need to play a lot with the things before you become fluent. But at the same time, we noticed that there were some people who don't know Python probably too well. So that tutorial is intended mostly for those people, and that's the reason why the other ones who already know Python, they don't want to hear again about dictionaries, about lists, and these kind of things. But of course, you're welcome to join. It's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern US time, so in a couple of hours, basically. And the link is going to be still this one. Instead, the first hands-on session is going to be tomorrow, again at 1 p.m. Eastern US time. And in that case, instead, make sure that you're going to be there. You don't miss it, because, like I said, not only you have to follow, but at some point we will stop. There's going to be 2 breakout sessions in which you will be given some time to answer some of the questions, some questions related to the material. So make sure you don't miss that. I think that's all. And with that, I welcome you once more to the course. And we start with the boring part. No, I'm sorry, hopefully not. Try to make also the slides a little bit more exciting, given that we have in front the mixed audience with different expertise. Hopefully the experiment succeeded. We'll see. You will let us know. We need your feedback as well. Okay, so let me share then the screen. I tried before, it seemed to work. I'm going to ask you again. If you see this thing here, including the last two lines, show somehow that you see the whole thing. If for any reason you can't see this, let us know. And I hope that also my voice comes through all right. So this is a course that was developed over the years to our undergraduate students mostly. And it's a course that we give every year. And now we also have a graduate version of that, but we use mostly the same material. And the material eventually formed the bulk of the book, a first course in network science. That comes somehow with the slides attached and all the material, including, of course, exercise sessions and a lot of problems and tutorials, some of which you will be seeing in action in the next, in this week and the next. So, but it doesn't mean necessarily, it doesn't mean that you have to buy the book, of course. Like I said, the lecture slides is all you need. And most of the contents can be found in many different places. So just take a look at the lecture slide and use more comprehensive resources like our book and others, if you're really interested in this topic and want to make an investment, professional investment in that. So what are we supposed to be doing here? We want to make you aware, if you're not already, that networks pervade all aspects of our lives. You're probably very familiar already with social networks, the term that is sometimes used improperly, in which the nodes are people and the links are relationship between people, friendship, relationship, other forms of social interaction, communication networks, computer networks like the internet, information networks like the World Wide Web, transportation network like the airline transportation network. We're going to give you an example of some of these things. But also, this is so like social, information, technological, but also biology. Our brain is also a network of many neurons, and there are different coarse grain levels that people use to study it. Sorry, if you put something in the chat, if it's a question or anything, I ask Satyaki or Sarah to perhaps to redirect this. Like I said, we can't really take too many questions during the class because I want to make sure that we use this time to deliver the notions. But if you have a couple of minutes at the end of this session or any session, we can do that. Otherwise, please use Slack or the office hour session for more in-depth, in-detail feedback. So that's the only thing that usually, of course, take question and answers. But like I said, the course spans 16 weeks, and we're going to do it, part of it only over 2 weeks. So at the same time, we have networks of proteins. We're going to see some of these protein-protein interaction networks. We have ecological networks like food webs, which are critical, to understand, the ecosystems, the environment. And we're going to give some examples. We start with a network gallery to give a sense of where you can apply this network representation. Because at the end, this is what it is. It's a representation that allows us to make sense of very complex systems, almost regardless of the details of what the nodes and the links are, because the description is at a high level. And at the same time, from geometry/topology alone, you can understand a bunch of high-level features of these systems, and then also understand also some basic features of dynamic processes running on them: epidemic spreading, information diffusion, opinion dynamics, search, and other things as well. So we give you some of these examples to give a feeling. We'll not really lose contact with reality. We'll make examples of real systems. And I understand among this group, there may be people who are more interested in the theory, and people who are more interested in the methods, and people who are more interested in the applications. So we try to give to each of them some reasons to be happy to be on board. Also because all these things are, very critical parts of any course on network science. And at the end of this course, hopefully, you will learn key aspects of networks, and you will learn to use some basic tools to analyze them and model them, as well as processes running on them. So these are the course objectives. you will learn essential concepts and core ideas on network literacy. You will learn how to load a data set, a network data set, to manipulate it. If you need to change anything about the structure, to export it in different formats, you visualize the network, create nice figures with it, and analyze them, so quantitatively. And for that, we'll use Python as a language and NetworkX as a library. And today, you will have an introduction to Python. For those, like I say, it's an optional for those who don't really know very well this language. And tomorrow we start with NetworkX, and this is probably less familiar to most of you. And then you will see some Python in action, and we will introduce some functions and classes that allow you to compute many features on networks in very quickly, just sometimes with really a handful of lines of code. And then we'll teach, of course, a bunch of quantitative features about networks, what the nodes are, the links are, what is the degree, what is the connectivity, what is the sparsity of a graph, connectedness, which is related to the concept of path, centrality measures and distributions. We'll also teach you how to plot distributions in Python, and to identify important nodes, important with respect to their role in the network. At the same time, we quantify features like network homophily and clustering, and explain how they come about in different systems. And at the same time, we describe at the end, we describe dynamic process on networks. This is usually one of the cool parts, because you can see directly what you can do with these things, what can happen on a network, like the spread of diseases for contact networks, spread of information diffusion, which also influence diffusion, opinion dynamics, rumor spreading, and so on. These are pretty much the things we're going to cover. And you will learn also basic models on network formation. You will learn the set of rules that have been used to put networks together, networks that resemble, or at least have some properties in common with the real networks that we encounter in daily life. And this is an example of one of the things network science specifically has been used for. And I would say there is no better moment than now somehow to convince people the importance of network science in the real world, that in this period in which we come after COVID. And during COVID, network models, network epidemic spreading on networks has been widely used to understand the trajectory of the epidemic in these different phases, and to inform the policies of governments to try to contain and limit its impact on the population. So actually, I'm going to show you this very same diagram when we talk about epidemics. So I'm going to tell you what the thing represents. This is actually a big epidemic spreading happened a few hundred years ago. Networks have been used also for business, specifically to efficiently search for items through a search engine. When Google was introduced as a search engine, it was the first one of its kind that used a network measure, a network centrality score, to rank the pages which were most relevant to the query that people were submitting through the prompt. When you put a list of keywords, and then the pages that you see listed in Google, originally from Google, initially they were ranked according to this measure. It was the first of, but technically the second, but I said the first big application of network science to search engines. And it was so successful that eventually it has obliterated the competing, and at that time, very successful alternatives like Alta Vista and Yahoo. And we also discuss about things like small words, 6 degrees of separation, something that maybe some of you have heard about. And this is actually a diagram that I'm also going to show again, that basically shows that networks, almost without exceptions, the nodes in networks are kind of close together. It takes just a few steps to go from any node to any other nodes, which is remarkable given that, for instance, in this case, this is a network of, say, friendships of people living in the United States, where there are hundreds of millions of people, that it's remarkable that you can go from any one to any other one, to any person to any other person on this network within a few steps. And also that people are remarkably good at navigating this network. This was something which was not so obvious when this experiment was performed, the Milgram experiment that we're going to go through tomorrow. But that instead showed that people are remarkably good at finding this trajectories, which are called paths, to reach a destination from their own position. And going to more recent times, I mean, small worlds are there, they've always been there, just been discovered earlier. We also we also mentioned the examples like the formation of echo chambers in social media. These are, I'm going to show you actually this picture next. It's one of our portraits in the gallery of networks. I'm going to show you next. This shows the polarization of positions around specific topic. In this case, of course, heavily politically loaded. This is a Twitter network of retweets, and these big bubbles that you see indicate that people are interacting much more often with people of the same kind, sharing the same beliefs and opinions, and much less with the ones sharing different positions and opinions, in this case represented by the two colors. And this leads to reinforcement of beliefs and to much more hostility towards those who do not share those beliefs. And you may have heard about echo chambers, and of course, it's connected to conspiracy theories and fake news and so on. So networks are used heavily also to describe this phenomena and hopefully understand how we can mitigate them. I'm not going to say much about software, in fact, almost nothing. I just reminded, I mean, you're going to have Satyaki here doing all the heavy lifting for you. Today, you'll be exposed to Python if you don't know much about it. So please attend our tutorial at 1 p.m. Eastern US time. Otherwise, starting from tomorrow, you will see, besides Python, within Python, you will play with the NetworkX library. And there is some question. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, this is very colorful. Like I said, unfortunately, I can't really address your questions, during the lectures, but we're gonna, like I said, unless there is some time at the end, which I'm doubtful. Yeah, eventually we will address all your questions, in dedicated sessions. So let me start, exposing you to some examples of networks, also to show you, in how many different contexts the network representation has been used and applied. This is a social context. These are people, these are Facebook users at Northwestern University, mostly students. Talking about some years ago, I doubt that there are many students, not only in this university, but also worldwide, who have Facebook accounts today. This is mostly for people my age. So I do have a Facebook account. I use it regularly, but nowadays people, young people are more into things like TikTok, Instagram. So, but it's not very different after all. These are also opportunities to communicate and to follow other people. In this case, also Facebook has a follow function, but Facebook has also the friendship function. You can ask people to get friends on Facebook, and if the other person accepts a request, then you become friends, and then you can start looking at each other profiles and communicate directly with them, expressing your preferences about some of the content they put online and so on. So the nodes are students. There are almost 20,000 of them on this one. This is one of the datasets of our collection that we may be playing with at some point, but it's freely downloadable. If you want to play with it, it's very easy. We already provided you the address. And the links, of course, represent this Facebook friendship that I mentioned. Links do not have a direction. The interaction is supposed to be reciprocal. So if I'm friends to you, you are friends to me, which is not always 100% true, but in this case, we assume it's a valid assumption. The larger, darker nodes are the ones with more connections. So having more friends on Facebook. This is the picture I showed you before. Now we leave Facebook, we enter Twitter. These are Twitter accounts. This is a directed network because you can, there are, of course, a follower-followee interaction, but in this case, the links represent retweets of posts by these accounts. So if Alice posts something, and John, posts a tweet, and John retweets that tweet, then there's going to be an arrow going from Alice to John, indicating that basically John has shared the information that Alice has posted first. So this is basically the arrows are so small that you can see them. This is a very large system. The color indicate the political orientation of these people, which was tracked down by specific hashtags which were used in the discussion. This is a discussion about the 2010 US midterm election to renew Congress. And as you can see, there is a strong polarization ongoing because the blue accounts are retweeting mostly posts from the blue accounts and not so many from the red accounts. So there are still some interactions between them, but not so many. And that leads to this effect that I mentioned before, echo chambers, reinforcement of beliefs, and there again more bubbles that you create and groups that clash with each other. Here again, I don't know if you can see, not all the, probably you can, actually you can see that some of the dots are bigger than others. In this case, the ones which are bigger than others have more connections, indicating that their posts are very frequently retweeted by others. So this is now an information network. We leave people, we embrace websites, specifically the websites of Wikipedia, which is an online encyclopedia that you probably use regularly when you look for some concepts, information. And the Wikipedia is really huge. So this is just mathematics. So it's a subset, all the pages which deal with mathematics, and mathematics itself would be this white dot in the middle. And so the nodes are Wikipedia websites about mathematics, and the links represent hyperlinks that allow you, by clicking on them, to go from one page, from one Wikipedia page on math to another Wikipedia page on math. So the system is self-consistent. There are only links between pages of the same subsystem. And the different colors indicate the pages which are in the same area, like Indian mathematicians or geometry or game theory or other things. And also in this case, larger nodes are more important. In this case, important is represented by the fact that the page is linked, so receives a lot of links, incoming links from other pages, which means it's often a reference of a lot of pages, which somehow indicate this, the authority of that page. So now we stay somehow in the context of technology, and it's no more information network. We have the internet router network. So in this case, the nodes are routers, which are these devices that allow to connect computer networks, and they usually attach to a modem. So this is what the nodes are, and the links represent, join pairs of routers which exchange signals on the physical internet. In this case, the links have no direction because usually the signal can be exchanged in both verses, from A to B and also back from B to A. The different colors in this case represent geographic proximity of these routers. So usually these routers, of course, have some position somewhere, and obviously the national internets are much more connected, internally, of course, than with the rest of the world. And that's how we can somehow spot territories, countries, and other geographic divisions. Again, the technology is transportation. The US air transportation network, you may recognize here in the big picture, the map of the United States, because in this case, we are using the geographic position of the nodes, which are airports, on the map. So you can recognize, I don't know, like LA, Los Angeles, and this is probably Denver, and then, I don't know, this is Houston maybe, Atlanta and Chicago, and so on. In this case, the nodes, of course, are airports, and the links represent direct flights between two airports. So if there is a direct flight going from, say, Chicago to Baltimore, then there's going to be a link going from Chicago to Baltimore, also because you expect that there's going to be also a return flight from Baltimore to Chicago. In this respect, the direction is not there. The sides of the nodes, again, represent how many direct flights there are between that location and other locations. So, of course, the bigger spots here, the bigger circles represent the largest airports, which are also called hubs. And this is a word that we're going to use frequently starting Wednesday in this course. Here you use the geographic position, and there are some nice libraries in Python that allows you to create a map like that. You can see also the Hawaii here, Hawaiian airports, and Alaska. Alaska looks much bigger because it's far up north, and there, of course, distances are dilated. Doesn't look so big, on the map, but it is very big. Whereas the inset represent another drawing of the same network, in which instead you ignore the geographic position and you use what is called a force-directed layout that I'm going to introduce hopefully at the end of this class. And we're almost at the end of our gallery. This is now a network of protein-protein interactions. So protein used to bind each other when they, in their interaction, physically bind with each other. You can really see it's called protein binding. And in this case, these are proteins of yeast, which is that fungus, which is critical for a bunch of processes because it's responsible for fermentation. That's what can make your beer, your wine, and it can also help you bake stuff, you know, nice cakes and other things. So, you know, how critical yeast is. It's a very super studied organism. And these are pretty much all the proteins of this organism and their binding interaction. So nodes are proteins. Links represent, there's a link between two proteins if they are seen, discovered binding with each other, and they express their function, and links have no direction because the binding is physical. If A binds to B, B binds to A as well. And finally, in this big drawing here, I'm showing you pretty much an ecosystem. This is the food web of species in the Florida Everglades. Florida Everglades is its own ecosystem. It's technically classified as a river, although it's huge. It really covers a big part of the central Florida, central and South Florida. And that's where you can find alligators, actually now even pythons and many other species. And this, of course, this species prey on other species. And the dots here represent, the circles represent this species. And the directed link between a species and the other one is set if one species preys on the other one. And actually, in this case, I hope we can see my arrow here, my cursor. This arrow means that that this species is often preyed by this other species. So this is the predator who receives, and that's why the arrow points to it, receives an energy influx due to its consumption of members of the other species. And in this case, you see that the links have a direction, because clearly if A eats B, B usually does not eat A in return. And also a thickness indicating how much consumption there is. So how often, how many, you know, I don't know, how many frogs and alligators eat, something like this. And in this case, the larger nodes have more incoming links, so are kind of the dominant species. They're like the top predators. And the red nodes instead are more outgoing links, means that they basically provide food to a lot of other species, so they are more often prey. Okay, I hope we can still listen to me. Please, if there is any problem, let me know, whichever way is possible. Hopefully there was no problem. Things look good on my end. So this is the plan that you're gonna carry out today. So now that you've been introduced, hopefully there's a bunch of networks and you know, you have an idea of where you can use them, but you will have hopefully a more precise idea as you move along. Of course, this is more quantitative kind of course. You're not gonna tell stories. Stories are good, and we're gonna tell a few stories, but we need to teach you how to compute stuff. And we cannot do that without introducing the key elements of networks. So we'll start with what nodes and links are, and I already told you what they are, how they are formally defined, and what kind of basic variables you can compute with them. Today we introduce a couple, and we also introduce how you can represent networks in a computer in an efficient way. It saves you some time, some memory, and also time when you try to analyze it. So what we would like to do at the end is to characterize the structure and behavior of networks, and also identify the roles of networks in the way they affect processes which run on them, processes like epidemic spreading, information diffusion, and so on. That's a goal. Hopefully we'll achieve at least part of it. So now we have to be a little bit more formal. There won't be many slides like this, but we need to have some degree of rigor. So let me tell you quickly what a network of graph is. I will use the word network and graph with the same content as it's often done in the literature. So I may say network or graph, I mean the exact same thing. In this case, a network of graph G has two parts. It's made of two parts. There is a set of n elements, which are called nodes or vertices. Again, I can use both words to indicate these things. and a set of L pairs of nodes called links or edges, because a link or edge connect two nodes. The link ij joins the nodes I and j. Two nodes are adjacent or connected or neighbors if there is a link between them. So networks can be undirected or directed. I gave you already some examples of both in our gallery. If the network is directed, it's also called a digraph or digraph thing. And I mean, this is technique. I mean, it's just semantic. In indirected networks, the links are called directed links. And in this case, the order of the nodes matters. So if you write ij, it means that the arrow somehow, the directed link goes from I to j. And I, in this case, is called the source of the link, and j, the target. So source node I, target node j, and ij and ji would be two different objects. In undirected networks, instead, all the links are bidirectional, and the order of the two nodes in a link does not matter. So networks can be unweighted or weighted. Again, due to the fact that this is a short course, we will be mostly dealing with unweighted networks, but we're going to give you the main definitions, and we're going to teach you how to compute some basic things on weighted networks too. In a weighted network, links have associated weights. So you don't have just I and j if the link goes from I and j or between I and j without direction, but you also have a number, w, that tells you how strong that association or interaction is. A network can be both directed and weighted, and we're going to see some examples next, in which case it has directed weighted links. So just to summarize, let's take this scheme here. Top left, undirected, unweighted. You see there are no arrows on the links, and all the links have the same thickness. It means basically there are no weights, so if you want, they have the same weight. They have the same weight, effectively they have no weight. Top right, directed, unweighted, unweighted, directed. You see actually the nodes are the same, and actually the pairs of interactions are the same. We're gonna just show them a little bit differently here. So you see there are arrows, and sometimes there are arrows in both senses, which means that, that there are links going in both directions. If this is I and j, there is ij, but there is also ji. Whereas in this case, the arrow is only one end, which means that then the corresponding the other thing is not there. But you see again, like in the previous case, the lines that represent the links have the same thickness, so there are no weights. Or again, there are the same weights, which means basically there is no weight. Here instead we go to the weighted realm. Weighted undirected. You see there are no direction, there are no arrows anywhere, and links have different thickness, indicating different strength, different weight. And finally, you have the more complex situations in which you have a network which is directed and weighted, in which you have both the arrows, as you can see here, and also variable thickness of the lines. Looks a bit ugly, but that's the way it is, indicating the different importance of strength of these interactions or associations. Okay, so now that we introduce the basic definition of network in the different variants, let's be a bit more quantitative, start to throw in a few formulas. They're going to be very simple formulas. You're not going to see anything really complicated here. That's a goal, and hopefully it's going to facilitate your understanding of these concepts, if they are new to you, of course. So the network size n is the number of nodes. So we indicate with capital N the number of nodes, how many nodes there are there, and with capital L the number of links, which are also called edges, as I indicated before, as well as the nodes, like the nodes are also called vertices. So in case, occasionally you hear edges or vertices, I indicate the same thing as links and nodes. So capital L is the number of links. Now, since a link can only join two nodes, then the maximum possible number of links that you can have in a network with n nodes is the total number of pairs that you can form with n objects, the objects being the nodes in this case. This is a very well-known expression in combinatorics. It's called n choose 2. this coefficient, which is n times n minus 1 divided by 2. So this is, if you have all the links, you're going to have, I mean, in an undirected graph, you're going to have then this number of links, n times n minus 1 divided by 2. But usually you don't have so many links, otherwise, obviously, the whole thing would be futile, right? Because, you know, there would be no nothing to learn from a network which is fully connected. So what you do, you find out you can compute what is the density of links in your network. And what you do to do that, you just divide the number of links of the network that are actually there, divided by the maximum number of links, which is given by this expression here. So if I do that, I get this expression, which is called density then. If there are no links, L is equal to 0, the density is 0. If all the links are there, L is equal to L max, and the density is 1. So this number is between 0 and 1. And this is okay. So it doesn't look like anything deep. The nice thing is that real networks, and we're going to show you a table, and you can find tables like this everywhere. Real networks are sparse. They have a density which is much smaller than 1, so far away from the maximum, which basically means there are many more missing links in the network than there are actual links. Now, if the network is directed, things are a little bit different, because in this case, between two nodes, there are two different links that you can put there, because you can go from I to J and from J to I. These are two different links. So not like in the case of undirected networks, you only have one link between I and J, because it doesn't matter in which direction you go through that link. In this case, you get twice as many links. And therefore, the maximum possible number of links is twice as big as the one that you have on an undirected network with the same number of nodes. So instead of having n times n minus 1 divided by 2, you just have n times n minus 1. The density is, in this case, L divided L max like before, but of course, L max in this case is slightly different, so it's L divided n times n minus 1. So there is just a factor of 2, which is missing, due to the fact that you can now have two links for each pair of nodes. If the network is complete, all pairs of nodes are connected. So basically, all the links are there, and the density would be exactly equal to 1. Let me give an example taken from a context that I know quite well, which is Facebook. Like I said, I regularly use Facebook, posting pictures of places I've been at, and also advertising some of our papers. If you want to really have an idea of the density of the Facebook graph, Facebook friendship graph, then you can consider that Facebook has about, or the order of 1 billion users. So it's pretty remarkable, given that, you know, there are not many more billion, there are not so many billions people around, so that there are so many people having a Facebook account. And Facebook actually sets a limit on how many friends you can have. You can have more than 5,000 friends. So you can assume that the number of links is about 1,000 times the number of nodes. Technically it would be, but that's what it's an upper limit. For instance, I have about actually 2,000 friends, but you know, some people have only a few hundred, some people have more than 2,000 friends, but the limit is 5,000. So that's a rough approximation. So if the density is then L divided by, I mean, this is an order, we want to find out the order of magnitude here. So we're not careful about small coefficients, constant, and so on. So instead of n times n minus 1, I can just put n squared, because n minus 1 and n are extremely close to each other when n is 1 billion. And I can forget also about the factor of 2 there. So if I replace the n and L in this expression here, I get 10 to the 3 times n, which is this L here, divided n squared. N squared, n, sorry, is 10 to the 9, and then the ratio is 10 to the minus 6, which is a very, very, very small number. So that shows indeed that there are very few pairs of friends with respect to the all the friendship you can have, given the very large number of users that you have in this system. The first somehow remarkable things about the networks that we study, of which I gave you examples before, the food web, the Everglades, and the Twitter network, the Facebook network, and the airline transportation network, is the fact that all these networks are sparse. So there are very few links between them, and many more and a huge number of pairs of nodes are disconnected. They are not connected to each other. And just to give you an idea of this, you're going to see this table over and over. We're going to list different features every time. The only things we're going to keep are the number of nodes and number of links. You already seen some of this network, the Facebook Friendship Network of Northwestern University. This is the network of movies and stars, stars playing in the movies. IMDb stands for Internet Movie Database. And this is a network you can get from that, a network of co-stars. We're not going to talk about this because we have to make some sacrifices. Twitter, US politics, you've seen it, the one with the two bubbles. This is a network of email communication of employees of a company, energy company, Enron. And then Wikipedia Math, you've seen. Internet routers, you've seen. US air transportation, you've seen. And of course, more broadly, you can take the world air transportation, in which we have airports everywhere in the world. The East-Protein interactions you've seen, the C. elegans brain I didn't show, and the Everglades ecological food web you've seen. Here there is a type. If nothing is present, it means it is undirected and weighted. If you have a W, it's weighted. If you have a D, it's directed. If you have both a D and a W, it means it is directed, weighted. And here you see that there is a broad variability with respect to the number of nodes. You go from only 69 nodes in the food web of the Everglades, these are all species, of course, to more than 500,000 for this one. And again, of course, this is accompanied by an equal heterogeneity in the number of links, from about 1,000 here to more than 1,000,000 for this one. And yet, when you compute the density of all these networks, the way I showed you before, for undirected and directed, you see that the results are very, very small numbers. Given that the maximum is 1, you can see how far from 1 we are, like in the example of Facebook, of the global Facebook that we've seen before. This is not the global Facebook. This is only including accounts of students of Northwestern University. So the largest one is 0.2, but also this is a very small network in which then, of course, you don't have, even in the best case, so many links between the nodes. This is the average degree. We're going to get to that in a second. Like I said, we're going to add some columns corresponding to the variables that we will introduce so that you can have a sense about the values that these variables can take in this broad collection of networks. Now, let me introduce another concept here, the concept of subnetwork, also subgraph. Like I said, network and graph are the same thing. A subnetwork is a network obtained by selecting a subset of the nodes and all of the links among these nodes. So if this is my network, if I select only these 3 nodes, 1, 2, and 3, I get this subnetwork, which includes only the links of the original network connecting these 3 nodes. You see there was a link between 1 and 3, and it's there, 1 between 2 and 3, and it's still there, and everything else is cut off. Same thing if the network is directed. So in this case, you include the directed networks which are connecting the nodes that I selected, which are the same 3 here. And you get, in this case, the link between 1 and 3 and the link between 3 and 2, which were originally in the initial network. If the subnetwork is complete, which means all the nodes are connected to each other, so there is a link between any 2 nodes of this subnetwork or subgraph, then it is called a clique. Technically, the concept of clique is a bit more strict than this one, but in the normal usage, one calls them cliques, even with this definition, but a bit looser definition I gave you. Okay, let me then introduce a major star of our course, the concept of degree. The degree of a node is just the number of neighbors of the nodes, the number of nodes which are connected to it. We will indicate the letter K, as it is usually done in the literature, not necessarily in computer science. They often use the letter D for degree, but we'll use the letter K. Ki indicates the degree of node I, the number of neighbors of node I. A node without neighbors is called a singleton. So in this case, the degree is equal to 0. In a directed network, the concept of degree is more specialized. There are two different concepts because you have these arrows now. And specifically, the in degree of a node is the number of incoming links to the node. And we'll indicate with K in I being the node. The nodes connected to I through those links are called predecessors, because in a sense, they come before they send these arrows to the node I. Likewise, you have the out degree of a node, which is the number of outgoing links from node I, and we'll indicate it with K out I. And like before, the out neighbors, so the nodes that you reach from I, following the arrows, leaving from I, are called successors. This is a terminology that makes perfect sense in the context of trees, but we will not define trees. This is one of the painful choices I had to make when I decided to sort out the material. Now, like I said, even though we're not going to be working a lot with weighted networks, we're still going to introduce some key concepts. If the network is weighted, the concept of degree can be easily generalized to this case. And the weighted degree, also called strength of a node, indicated with the letter S, I, is the total weight of all the links attached to node I. In a weighted directed network, we have in strength Si in, which is the sum of the weights of the links going to I, so pointing arrows to I, and the out strength Si out, which is the sum of the weights of the links coming out of I. So let me give you some examples here. We can use this diagram to make sense of these concepts. By the way, let me stop sharing a second. Yeah, let's make sure. Is everything fine so far? You know, Satyaki, could you tell me if so far, you know, you lost my voice or anything? Okay, so thanks. I see hands. So please tell me. Yeah. Unmute yourself. Say, I can't follow anymore, or the voice comes through like weird. So please, that's important. Thanks a lot. Okay, so in this case, let me go back to slides. And actually, we are not far from the end of this. So maybe we can have some time for questions. Okay. So I introduced this concept. So we have the same diagram as before. Similar in classifying networks based on whether they are undirected, unweighted, undirected, weighted, directed, unweighted, and directed, weighted. So let's start from the simplest case. There are no arrows, and all the links have the same thickness, so they have no weight. And here I highlighted 3 nodes, A, B, C. I'm going to do the same in all 4 examples, and indicate also what is the degree of those nodes. So A, you see, has no neighbors, is not connected to anything, so the degree of A is 0. B has 4 neighbors, indicated by the red lines attached to B, so its degree is 4. C is connected only to 1 node, so its degree is 1. And that's it, basically. So hopefully the concept is sufficiently clear. And like I said, I should have a few minutes today for questions, so that's good. I may even start saying something about the next class to save some time and leave also more room for questions next time. So if we go instead to the directed unweighted, so you see again, all the links here have no thickness, but they have arrows. So now we have to specialize the concept because we have in and out degree. So A has no neighbors. There are no arrows going to A, and there are no arrows leaving from A. So the in degree and the out degree of A is 0. B, who had, because the diagram is the same, I just put some arrows, as you see, the interaction, the pairs of nodes interacting are the same. But now there are arrows. So B has in degree 1, because you see there is only one arrow pointing to B from one of its neighbors. This is called the predecessor. And as I indicated before, and out degree 3, because there are 3 arrows leaving B. And these 3 nodes would be the successors of B. Likewise, for C, there is in degree 1, because there is one arrow pointing to C, and out degree 0, because there are no arrows leaving C to go somewhere else. Now, if we go to the undirected weighted case, now you see that there are no arrows, but the nodes, but the links are different thickness. So now I have to count not just the number of links attached to the nodes, but also their weight. So for instance, in this case, the strength of node A is 0 because A has no neighbors. So there are no links and there is no weight on those links. For B, sorry about this example. Yeah. So for B instead, I had to sum the weights on the 4 links connected to B. So there is 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So the strength of B is 7. Whereas C has only one neighbor, which has weight 2, and therefore the strength is 2, or weighted degree is 2. And finally, the most complex case, directed weighted. Now we have 2 different measures for each node. The nodes are always the same ones, A, B, and C. And like before, for A, both the in strength and the out strengths are 0 because A is not attached to anything. Whereas for B, the in strength is 3 because the only arrow pointing to B is attached to a link with weight 3, as indicated also by the thickness of the link. Whereas the out strength is 4 because even though we have 3 links going out of B, the out degree was 3, is 3, one of them has weight 2. So if you sum the weight, we have 1 plus 1 plus 2, which is equal to 4. And finally, C has in strength 2 and out strength 0 because the only link connected to C is incoming. And so there are no outgoing links, and that's the reason why the out degree is 0, therefore also the out strength is 0. Whereas the incoming link has weight 2, and therefore you have in strength equal to 2. Okay. So now that we introduce the degree, let's play a little bit more with that. The average degree of a network, something that you will hear me say a few times in these few days of the course, is then simply the average of the degrees of the network. So you sum I over I, all the nodes of the network, each of them will have degree, its own degree, Ki, you sum over all of them and you divide by the number of nodes, N. And there is a simple connection involving the network size, the number of links, the density, and the average degree. We consider the case of undirected networks. The average degree is equal to twice the number of links divided by the number of nodes. This is true for any undirected network. This is actually the outcome of the so-called handshaking theorem. So basically, why is that? The degree counts the number of neighbors, right? So my degree is the number of my neighbors. Every time you add the link into the system, you're including 2 more neighbors. Suppose that you add one link between I and J, which were previously disconnected. So now, after you do that, I will have an extra neighbor, which is J, and J will have an extra neighbor, which is I. This will happen for any link that you're going to add to your system. So the number of neighbors total, which is the numerator of this, is twice the number of links because each link adds 2 neighbors. That's why this is a general property. It doesn't matter what the network looks like because it's just connected to this very simple reality that a link is equal to 2 neighbors. And then, of course, you divide by N like before. Now, the number of links is equal to the density times the total number of pairs of nodes that you have in the system. This is a formula that you've seen before. And if you actually downloaded the slides of the class, already, at least the ones of lecture 1, this one, you can also retrieve that. In fact, since we have some time, let me go back to that. I'm not going to go full screen because I wanted to show you that. So this is what I'm using. D is equal to 2L divided n times n minus 1. But now I'm using D to express L. So I'm bringing n times n minus 1. On the other side of this, it goes on the top divided by 2. So L is equal to dn n minus 1 divided by 2, which is what I'm showing here. And the 2 gets divided by this here. That's why you don't see the 2 anymore. So then the n and the n cancels out, and you see that the average degree is exactly equal to the density of links of the graph times n minus 1, n being again the number of nodes. You can invert this formula, express D as a function of the average k by bringing n minus 1 down below here. So you get that D, the density of links of any graph, is equal to the average degree divided by n minus 1. Simply from this, from the first and the last, from the inequality that you get, following all the steps within average k and this d times n minus 1, you just invert this. But n minus 1 is the maximum degree that the node can have, because any node has n minus 1 potential neighbors. So if all the nodes are neighbors, then its degree would be k max, and you cannot have more neighbors than the remaining number of nodes. So this is why you can connect average degree with density, and the density with also the maximum possible degree. This is useful. I mean, this is a simple relationship. You see the definitions are really clear. The important thing is this one. Everything starts from this, which is this handshaking theorem, which is connected to the fact, like I said, each link adds 2 units of degree, 2 neighbors to the system. Oh, is there a question here? Chat, let me see. How to know which is the best network to describe phenomena? Oh, here we're going to like a PhD kind of thing. We can talk about this, and maybe actually I can address this at the end of this. Okay, thanks for the question. Again, we had to make some choices when we decided to create this course. Specifically, we wanted to make sure we don't deal with anything really too complex, or not somehow general enough to be interesting in such a short course. So one thing that we're going to do, we're going to use some simplifying assumption. We'll assume that we have only one type of nodes, whether they are people or animals or computers or websites, because there are so-called multi-layer networks in which you can have networks constructed by other networks which are made of different types of nodes and links. For simplicity, all the nodes, for instance, in this picture represent the same type of entity, whether they're individuals or animals or computers or websites or proteins or species or anything. Oh, sorry. Then there are not self loops. This is something that can actually happen, specifically when you create models, when you work with models of network construction that we're going to deal with on Wednesday. So you don't have links that start from a node and end to the node. So this is not allowed, although it can happen, and you occasionally have this kind of things. At the same time, we will not allow for the existence of more than one edge or link between 2 nodes, because in, again, a bunch of situations, you can also have multiple edges between the same 2 nodes. Like in this case, you have 2. So this is not allowed in our course, but like I say, it can happen. And again, this is something which is sometimes created by network models, models of network construction. So, but usually, if as a network grows large and you include many more and more nodes, these effects will become negligible. There will be a negligible fraction of pairs of nodes which will have more than one link. So we'll just ignore them. 2 nodes, 1 edge, or 0. So either they're not connected or there's going to be 1 edge, and there's not going to be self loops. It's just to keep our life simple. Now, we want you to work with this network. We want you to analyze them. We want you to, perhaps change a little bit the shape. We want you to be able to visualize them. But to do that, of course, you need to represent them somewhat. So how do you represent numerically a network, the structure of a network, so that you can import it in your Python notebook and start playing with it, start computing stuff on it, start visualizing it? So there is a representation which has been around forever, which is the one of the adjacency matrix, and it's usually part of the course. But again, we don't have time because it's not efficient at all for sparse networks. So I'm going to show you instead the 2 main representations used to code sparse networks in a computer. One is the adjacency list, and the other one is the edge list. So let's go to that. Suppose that we have this network here. We have 10 nodes from 1 to 10, and the edges, the links that you see. What you do, an adjacency list lists all the nodes, in this case 10, you see 1, 2, 3, up to 10. And after each node gives the list of its neighbors. So you see 1 has only one neighbor, which is 2. So after 1, you see number 2, which is the neighbor, the only neighbor of 1. 2 instead is connected to 1, to 3, and to 4. So after 2, I have 1, 3, and 4. 3 is connected to 2 and 4, and so on. You can also see that edges are repeated. You see each link is listed twice because 4 is connected to 2, 3, 5, and 7. So 4, 2, and 2, 4 is the same link. This is an undirected network. But since here the focus is the node, then you're going to represent the links from both points of view. So there is a little bit of redundancy here. You just get twice somehow the space that you need to code it, which is why actually I'm not very fond of this representation, although this is really a problem when you're dealing with incredibly large networks. Usually, this is still a representation that is often used in application. Now, what happens if the network is weighted? If the network is weighted, instead of having one number for each number in this case, but of course the nodes can be also represented by strings or even names like John, Mary, depends what your nodes are. But we'll mostly use numbers because it's simple and you can always make the map between numbers and the actual names of the nodes. So what you have is that next to the name of each node, you also put the weight of the link connecting the 2 nodes. Which means that if node, like in this case, 2 has 3 neighbors, you will have then 6 numbers. After 1, you have the weight of the link between 2 and 1. After 3, you have the weight of the link between 2 and 3. After 4, you have the weight of the link between 2 and 4. So this is adjacency list. I haven't used it very often, but I don't want to make any judgment. I've been using much more often this other representation, which is the edge list. It is another of the representation that NetworkX and pretty much any serious network analysis platform can understand and read, which is the edge list or link list if you want. So you list the node, the pairs of connected nodes. So basically, you just say, put the list of the edges. That's why it's called edge list or the list of the links. So you see 1, 2 is one edge, 2, 3 is another edge or link. It's the same word. 2, 4, 4, 5, 4, 7, and so on. This is not redundant. Each link, this is an undirected network. Each link is reported only once. So you see also, compared to the previous one, it uses less space. It's more compact, so you can save some space. And this is actually a representation that I use, and I would say overall it's probably the most popular representation. When the network is sparse, Because, for instance, if you use something like the adjacency matrix that I haven't introduced, in that case, you have to code also the links which are missing. But as I told you, in the real networks that people are really interested in studying, most of the links are missing. So the links which are actually there are a very tiny fraction of all the links that can be actually there. So you don't want to waste memory on your device or on other devices, the ones that you use for, to work, by coding no information. So you want only to report the valuable information. I only say the links that are there, and I ignore all the other ones because, of course, they don't represent anything. Like in the case of the adjacency list, if the network is weighted, you want to add information about the weight. In this case, that would be the third entry in this representation. So I don't know, if the link between 1 and 2 is weight 3, then I would add the number 3 at the end of this line. If the weight of the link between 2 and 3 is 5, then I would add 5 here, and so on. I would just add the third entry corresponding to the weight of that link. So it's also very simple. Again, there is no waste here, no redundancy. That's why we're going to deal with this more often than with other things. And professionally, I've been dealing almost exclusively with this format. Okay, this is the last slide for today. Thanks for your attention. And you're going to see a bunch of visualizations. We want to show you how to visualize networks. And network visualization has become a field of its own, given how increasingly big the networks that people are using in applications have become recently. And it's nice not only to create nice figures, but to have a better sense of what the networks look like. It's kind of difficult then to see the nodes if you have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of nodes, and there are issues with scalability because it may take really a long time to draw a network which is this big with like millions of nodes. But nowadays it's possible. There are some sophisticated algorithms that can indeed still render a meaningful visualization of networks which are very large. I remember when I started in this business, already a couple of thousand nodes was a challenge. We only use network X, so also Gephi. We'll only use network X. We try to be consistent. We don't want to overwhelm you with different stuff. It's good that you know about Gephi. We've used it, and it's been around for actually longer than network X. But we're going to do everything endogenously. So Satyaki will show you. Thanks for the question. Luca? Francesco, sorry. No, sorry, Luca. And Francesco asked what? Gephi top for large graph. I'm using Gephi for 1.5. Yeah, exactly. Top for large graph, but I tell you, I know more recent developments, it can go higher than that. But it's good that Gephi is catching up, So there is, like I said, there is its own literature. Even some of the conferences are just about that because it's a big thing. Is there any specific rule choosing the layout? Yeah, I'm not done yet. So let me finish with this part, and then actually, hopefully, there's going to be still at least probably 5 minutes or more. I can also stay a couple of minutes extra to address your points. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so please just save the question. Actually, I'm going to go through this. If I haven't addressed it, then hopefully everybody will get their answer. So like I said, this is the last slide. This is an example of visualization, not very sweet. So we're going to use networkx.draw. This is the function, drawing function network X, and Satyaki is going to make you very familiar with that soon, starting tomorrow. So what you need to draw a network is a network layout algorithm that places nodes on a plane, because of course our screen is a plane, or our paper, if you want to print it out, or poster. And create some meaningful visual, something that you can interpret somewhat, although it's kind of difficult, when a network is large, to make sense. You can even see the single nodes, and the edges can overwhelm everything. So it's an art and a science, drawing networks. And that's as much as I'm going to say about this. I want to give you just a high level version of this. For as long as I can remember, algorithms for network visualization are mostly force-directed, the most popular ones at least that I know of, but I'm not an expert in network visualization, force-directed layout, also called spring layout algorithm. And they work the following way. So that's a name, force-directed layout, also called spring layout. Spring, I'm not talking spring like the season, spring like the spring, the physical spring, the ones that, contract and then expand. In physics, the springs of your bed, mattress, say. The way it works is that connected nodes are placed near each other, indicating somehow that because of the connection, they are close to each other. Links have usually similar length. You try to minimize crossing too many pairs of links because it looks very bad. It can really hide a lot of information. And the way it's technically done, you are assuming that your network is a physical system of mass particles subjected to some forces. If there is a link between two nodes, you have a spring connecting these two nodes, which tends to keep these two nodes close to each other. So that pulls them together. Whether they are connected or not, there is also a repulsive force. So basically what you have all these pairs of nodes, and they're going to be attractive spring-like forces if they are connected, and repulsive forces whether they are connected or not. And what you do, you're just looking for an equilibrium configuration that minimizes the energy of the system. So the final position of the nodes and the links is determined by this equilibrium configuration. And sometimes you can see when you launch this argument, you see it takes a while, and then you see that the nodes start to move, and the links, of course, follow, because they're looking for this equilibrium. So it looks for the configuration of minimum energy. Like I said, this is a field by itself. It will take perhaps even weeks to go over a course on network visualization. I think we even have one in our school. And this is as much as I'm going to tell you. You're going to see a bunch of visual with the draw function on network X during the hands-on session that Satyaki will be leading. But that's as much as I want to tell you today. And let me then stop sharing. We still have a few minutes. There were a couple of unanswered questions. Let's see if I can do something here. Okay, the folder notebooks. Sorry, let me see. Okay, folder notebooks seems to be empty for me. I wonder if anybody else has this problem. It should be. No, I'm sorry. I already addressed that. Like I said, there are no notebooks yet. There are going to be notebooks after each session, whereas all the slides are there. In the GitHub folder, is there a collection of sample research papers, and especially interest in application on network science? This is an interesting idea. We can discuss and consider that. We are not providing references beyond and beyond. Of course, you're going to find a lot in our book and so on, but you don't need that. We can consider this. So let's keep this in mind. 6 degrees in Spanish is el mundo es un pañuelo. Oh, yeah, I know what that means. Thank you. How to know which is the best network to describe a phenomenon? It depends what your phenomenon is. I mean, are we talking about people? Are we talking about, I don't know, communication? Are we talking about predation? So first you have to define the main unit of your system, and then the interaction. And then you can create a network that has never been seen if it's most useful for you. So the answer is that it really depends case by case. We will use network X, the draw function on network X. And like somebody pointed out, Francesco, thanks for that. Right now, Gephi is able to draw really very large graph. But like I said, there are even bigger ones than that. Okay, let me see. Gephi, okay. Is there any specific rule for choosing the layout for network visualization? It depends on the number of nodes and other network parameters. There is competition between very efficient visualizations. Like I said, force-directed layout, fast versions of force-directed layout is still one of the main choices. And none of the networks we're going to visualize in our sessions here is going to be large enough to give us any problem. So we're going to use very simple layout. If you're interested, we can give you, if you're interested in the topic of network visualization, we can give you pointers to more, to dedicated sources. Do you have a recommended dataset size for the course project? In the pitches that I put together yesterday, I try not to exceed the size of 1,000 nodes because I suspect that in this collab environment, it would take quite some time to run on much larger sizes. So we want you, of course, to get your results in a reasonably short time. And we're also going to do some tests just to make sure it doesn't take too long even to run stuff for 1,000 nodes or less. And finally, I'm sorry for this background noise. I'm in the house of my parents here, and it's kind of a noisy street. I hope we didn't disturb the narrative too much. Regarding 6 degrees of separation, did you say earlier that almost all real networks, all real-world networks have small worldness? Yes, I said that. If that is the case, why? I'm going to tell you why on Wednesday. So there is a natural path to that, and that shows why this thing is almost a trivial property, even though it looks strange, amazing at that time. But eventually, even random networks have a small world property. So it's not a big deal. It's not difficult to reproduce. All right. Is there anything else? Take advantage. You still have 4 minutes. I mean, I can still stay a little bit longer, and since we don't